Everyone, and I'm very glad to invite you to our next panel, our discussion in the press center of Ukraine Crisis Media Center. So our discussion is titled Russian Disinformation Against a Just Peace, Global Dimension. Today we gathered in this circle to discuss several topics, among them why is just peace in Ukraine important to the global majority, and also we will discuss the distinguishing between peace formula and victory plan, which is quite actively discussed in global media, and the challenges of international communication regarding Ukraine's terms for ending the war. And also, if we will have a time, we will also have a brief look to the science diplomacy as a measure of Kremlin's hybrid influence. So now I'd like to introduce our distinguished speakers. They are Alim Aliyev, Deputy Director General of the Ukrainian Institute. Thank you for joining us. Ivan Fechko, Latin American and Caribbean Research Program Junior Fellow, Ukrainian PRISM. Thanks for joining us. And also later, Mykhailo Samus, Director of the New Geopolitics Research Network, will also join us. And I, Volodymyr Solovyan, Head of UCMC Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group, will moderate this discussion. And also I'd like to mention that this event became possible thanks to Unfold Ukraine to Global South project implemented by UCMC in cooperation with the Open Society Foundation and founded by the International Renaissance Foundation. So now I'd like to push forward our discussion and like to ask Ivan to present his general view regarding Russian attempts to use the local dictatorships in their attempts to destabilize the global regions, and also what is the role of Russian disinformation activities in that dimension.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, dear colleagues, for coming to Ukraine. It's very important for us, and I try to give very short brief about our research, different research about Russian influence in so-called Global South, especially in Latin America, but also in Africa. And we can recently, me and my colleagues, we, against the background of preparation for Global Peace Summit and attempts to involve as much countries from Africa, from Latin America as possible, we have been actively following the Russian propaganda machine, which has thrown all its force into the obstacle of true peace and strengthening influence in the countries of this region. Because, first of all, for Putin, the issue of supporting different dictatorial regimes in this region is very crucial to share this power, this influence in this region, geopolitical influence, and the destabilization of the situation in this region is a consequence of the powerful actions of the Russian special services, because in this way Russia manages to actively spread its influence in these countries. One very good example is Russia's support for dictatorial regime of Nicolas Maduro. After the stolen election, 28 July, we saw that Russia was one of the first countries to recognize this so-called election, recognize Maduro as the winner of this election. But even before this election, Ukrainian journalists revealed that Russia was sending a lot of stolen Ukrainian grains from the occupied territory of Ukraine, from the south of Ukraine, to Venezuela, to support Maduro from this severe humanitarian crisis the country is facing. And in our opinion, this is one of the examples how Russia traditionally uses food as a tool of influence, like a real weapon to achieve their geopolitical goals, because first they started this humanitarian crisis when they invade Ukraine and they broke this traditional system of supplies of grain, and then they use this to give Ukrainian stolen grain to their allies in different regions, especially, for example, in the situation in Venezuela. Following the so-called election and the start of protest in Venezuela, another very important moment, Russia sent Wagner mercenaries, I guess you heard about this group, to help suppress the movement. And according to Venezuelan lawyer William Cardenas Rubio, who submitted this case to the International Criminal Court, he claims that Maduro hired almost 2,800 Wagner soldiers to go after dissidents, to oppress this movements, this protest. And this number make it clear that we are witnessing a Russian invasion of Latin America aimed at Russian democracy. Because we saw exactly the same situation in 2019, yeah, where also there was massive protest and Russia helped Maduro this time, and now they are doing this again. And also another example of the support was when Russian warship docked in Venezuelan ports to show this loyalty, to this support also. And for example, last year, another also very important moment about this influence was conflict between Venezuela and Guyana, when Maduro intended to try this geopolitical situation to clinch to power, and naturally such potential conflicts, not only in Latin America but also in other regions, are advantageous to Russia as they divert global attention from Ukraine and undermine the world order based on the principle of the UN Charter. And by violating these principles with its invasion of Ukraine in 2014 and full-scale invasion in 2022, Russia has sparked a wave of this global destabilization. And many dictators, like in Africa, in Latin America, especially Russian allies, I mean, first of all, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, they see that they can commit any crimes without facing consequences to stay in power and fulfill their ambitions. Let's see. For regions like Latin America and Africa, stability and security founded on a rules-based world order and respect for territorial integrity are crucial for development. And these principles, along with other principles like food security, non-use of food as a weapon, nuclear safety, and the return of deported children, for example, they form the basis of Ukraine's peace formula, which was the focus of the first peace summit in Switzerland. And despite very strong pressure from Russia, 10 countries from Latin America, 8 countries from Africa participated in this summit, which was a very good statement to their commitment to peace. Now we can see another threat in this regard. It's a so-called Sino-Brazilian peace plan. They proposed this year, first last year, and this year they renew it. And why Ukraine is like disappointed with this initiative? There are 3 moments. First of all, because some points of this plan are not suitable. It's a favor for Russia aggression and for Russian future plans. Another moment that this plan was not discussed with Ukrainian government, and of course it's not a good idea to propose any initiative how to stop a war in Ukraine without Ukraine. And of course any such initiatives like this plan, it's very dangerous because it's like a competition, it's a problem, obstacle for promoting Ukrainian peace formula, which is based on a UN charter. And now we can see in different Latin American countries how very intensively Chinese diplomats working to push this plan. And it's not surprisingly that Russia has endorsed this because it's a very logical idea to have this plan, this initiative, and in this regard, stop Ukrainian initiative, Ukrainian peace formula. Similarly, Russia is now very actively trying to destroy the legitimacy of the Rome Statute at the jurisdiction of the UN Criminal Court. We can see it on the beginning of September when Russian President Putin came to Mongolia and wasn't arrested, despite this warrant. And now the next idea could be visit, for example, Brazil to summit of G20, and of course it could be also a very problematic issue for international order. And in this context is the effort of African and Latin American countries that continue to support peace despite the all pressure are invaluable. For instance, Chile has offered to host a conference on the implementation of one of the points of Ukrainian peace formula, and it's very important for Ukraine to gain this support from as much as possible countries from Global South, from so-called Global South like Latin American countries, African countries, so we can pressure on aggressor to finish this war. And on the 10th year of the war, we can see that Russian propaganda narratives in the mass media remain practically the same. They say that Russia is not at war with Ukraine, but with NATO. They're trying to find some kind of fascism in Ukraine. They discuss the legitimacy of the Ukrainian government, attempts to discredit the armed forces of Ukraine. And it's very interestingly that Russian propagandists prepare different messages for different audience. For example, for left audience, they mentioned about anti-Americanism, about this NATO story, about the story of close ties of Soviet Union with different countries. But at the same time, they have another ideas, another narratives for right-wing audience. They mentioned and emphasized the values of that Russia is the only defender of the rights of their idea in the world. And of course, these narratives, this completely contradicts the previous leftist doctrine, and it is like another proof of the absurdity of Russian propaganda. And just to sum up this short speech, we can also see that Russia now actively working with young leaders from Latin America, from Africa. For example, this year they hosted a very big festival in Sochi in March of this year. They invited more than 20,000 of young leaders from different organizations and conducted an active propaganda course for them to whitewash Russian criminal actions in Ukraine. Also, we can mention about a very big Russian propaganda machine like, for example, Sputnik, Russia Today, which has have audience almost 40 million people in Latin America, for example, and they are like competitors to global broadcasters like CNN, and of course it's very dangerous situation that they share and spread this propaganda. And of course it's should be stopped because first of all it's very important to identify Russian propaganda, especially when they use this trolls, bots, farm of bots, especially from Venezuela, and fight it in all regions of the world. Well, it's actively spreading, especially now when we are hoping to have this end of the war finally, but of course it should be on the basis of UN Charter, international order. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivan, for this complicated and complex overview of Russian attempts to destabilize Latin America through information means. And now I'd like to give floor to Alim Aliyev, and who represents the Ukrainian Institute, which conducted several distinguished studies regarding Russian cultural diplomacy. So please give us your general view regarding this issue.
Yeah, thank you, Volodymyr. Good morning, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to have you here in Kyiv, and welcome to Ukraine. My name is Alim Aliyev. I'm deputy head of Ukrainian Institute. It's an institution that affiliated to MFA of Ukraine, and we are dealing with cultural diplomacy. But I have a few hats. I'm originally from Crimea. I'm Crimean Tatar, indigenous population of Ukraine. That's why I'm a founder of few NGOs in Ukraine about Crimean Tatar identity and also human rights NGOs. That's why we can talk about cultural diplomacy and our studies, and also about Crimea issues. But I will start with our overview of our research about Russian cultural diplomacy abroad. But before, I will want to say that near a year ago, we started to work with the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and to strengthen the ties between Ukrainian artists, scholars, think tanks, and counterpartners abroad. because for us, it's, it's the first steps when we talk to each other straight and directly, not via another countries and via another partners or enemies, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, I will follow this research, and I will start with Brazil. I will start with the Brazilian intelligence agency that discovered a Russian spy operating in Brazil in April this year. And his name is Sergei Chumilov, and he left Brazil after this information from ABIN agency. And he was first secretary in Russian embassy. And also he was one of the leaders of Russian cultural diplomacy organizations in Brazil as Русский мир and Россотрудничество. We studied 3 institutions, Russian institutions: Русский мир, Россотрудничество, and Fond Gorchakova, that spreaded the Russian narratives through the tools of cultural diplomacy. And I just give highlights from each of this organization. And I will start with Россотрудничество. Is the largest, best funded, and most historically looted Russian cultural diplomacy institutions. And it's literally a Russian government agency whose mission is promote a positive image of Russian abroad through the diplomacy. And in our research, we have also examined that Россотрудничество ideological foundations, for example, intents of militarist propaganda activities following the launch of the full-scale invasion abroad, as well as pseudo-humanitarian operations in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine, in the east and southern part of Ukraine. And also it provides information support for proactively to integrate these occupied territories into the Russian realm. If we talk about Русский мир, and all Russian world in English, a foundation is a Russian cultural diplomacy institution establishment as a non-governmental organization through closely controlled and coordinated by Kremlin and funded almost from the Russian federal budget. And the foundation has become the organizational embodiment of the ideology of the Russian world, the political concept of Russia's elites that emphasizes the originality and uniqueness of Russian civilization, expressed in the Russian language, culture, and ideology, of course. For several decades, the Russian world concept has been used to justify Russian expansionism in its near abroad and globally. And also, the activities spread conservative elements of Russian culture, for example, Russian church abroad, and aimed to uniting Russians and Russian sympathize abroad. And Fond Gorchakova, it's a Russian governmental controlled non-governmental organization. Sorry for such a calambour. Tasked with the developing of disseminating pro-Kremlin foreign policy narratives, both within the country and among foreign audiences, where its academic and educational programs, the fund built a network of young professionals likely to become the next generation of political elites in Russia, and abroad educating them in Kremlin policy narratives. And in addition, through larger events and higher political level, the fund support initiatives that foster a rapprochement between Russian and European politicians or politicians from the different countries abroad. What important to say in all of these studies of Russian disinformation, why does just a peace for Ukraine matter to the world? Yeah, the answer lies in the universal values of territorial integrity, rule of law, and multiculturalism. But Russian invasion and Russian side just to try to show that Ukraine is a failed state and Ukraine is a Nazi country, etc., etc., etc. And the activities of such organizations highlight a broader strategy to undermine Ukraine's narrative and promote an alternative reality that normalize Russian aggression, for example. And this is why this scientific diplomacy, as a von Gorchakova diplomacy, and disinformation of truthful, transparent information are crucial. Ukraine must continue to build connections between countries. And for us, it's important not only governmental connections, but first of all, it's people diplomacy. It's the horizontal diplomacy between the people. It's expert diplomacy between Ukraine think tanks, analytical centers, and in other countries, and also cultural diplomacy. Only just during this year, we started projects in Indonesia, in South Africa, in Brazil, and now we are preparing projects in Mexico, in India, in Kenya, to talk more about Ukraine and current situation, but also to show more about Ukraine culture. Because what's important for us, if we talk about different approach, because when we talk about Russian disinformation and propaganda and these institutions as Россотрудничество, they try to spread this propaganda, for us crucial to build trust between our society and societies abroad. And this trust and confidence we can build only when we can talk with each other, and we talked in one language of values. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I'd like also to ask you about your vision regarding long-standing Ukrainian diplomatic effort regarding Crimea, I mean, Crimean platform. And as I know, you personally and the institution you are representing are deeply engaged into this initiative. And also, which is important to mention, that this year is the year when we mark 80th anniversary of deportation of Crimean Tatar people. And only Ukraine and Poland recognized this act by Soviet officials as a genocide against Crimean people, Crimean Tatars. So what do you think about engagement of countries of the so-called Global South to the initiative of Crimean platform, and why it is so important to talk about this and maybe bring some comparisons with local history and local agendas, which may bring us to the common understanding of what Russia did in 20th century and what happened in 2014.
Thank you. I just clarify that I don't like this term in Global South because we haven't any Global South. Yeah, we have different particular countries. We have regions that very different. Even if we talk about, for example, sub-Saharan Africa, it's different countries with different history and different culture. That's why I can talk about particular examples from our practice from particular countries. Yeah, sorry for that. When we talk about Crimea, I want to just give a broader context, and it's important. As I mentioned before, I'm Crimean Tatar. We're indigenous people of Ukraine, and we're totally different from Ukrainians because we're Muslim population of Ukraine. We have our own language, culture, and our motherland is Crimea territory. But what's important in my identity, I'm ethnically Crimean Tatar, but I'm politically Ukrainian, yeah, because it's my land, and a lot of Crimean Tatars today serve in Ukraine army because we are fighting for our land and for our vision of future. What's important to say when we talk about temporary occupation of Crimea? For us, it's a recolonization of peninsula. What it means? I just give two figures to you. In 18th century, before the first annexation of Crimea by Russian Empire by Catherine II, 95% of all of population in Crimea were Crimean Tatars. Now it dropped into 13%. And now when we talk about the recolonization, it means a few dimensions. First, it's militarization. And not only the militarization were weapon, and today Crimea, one of the main platforms to launch the missiles, Russian missiles, to another part of Ukraine. But it's about militarization of consciousness from the childhood, from the schools, to in different public areas in Crimea. Second, it's identity. Russia tried to destroy strong Crimean Tatar and Ukraine identity in Crimea. For example, my language is one of the vanishing languages according to UNESCO list. And it means that now we try to support our identity when we established initiatives here in Kyiv and spread these initiatives to Crimea. And one more is population, replacement of population. More than 70,000 people left Crimea from 2014. It was a brain drain. It was young professionals, students, artists, journalists, political leaders, etc., etc., etc. It's really not a huge number, but we have another tendency. More than 700,000 people came from Russia to Crimea. And it's colonization from the Russian side. And such attempts is a third attempt when Russia brought the people from Russian territories to Crimea. That's why when we talk about Crimea platform established in 2021, yeah, as an international tool to to communicate with communities, with the countries, with different countries about Crimea, and to preserve, of course, the human rights issues in Crimea, but also to build our own Ukraine agenda across Crimea issues. And for me, Crimea platform, it's also a tool when we back our voices, when we talk about our agenda with a world who share our values. That's why I not divided this world to Europe or Latin America or Northern America, etc., etc., etc. I divide world who share our values, yeah, of dignity, of freedom, of democratic processes in the country, of multiculturalism, and who share another values. Yeah, that's why today, just 2 weeks ago, yeah, we launched first Crimea platform, a summit of Crimea platform that combine different political groups and presidents, head of states, different states, but also experts level. And we talk about Crimea not only one time in a year, but during all of the year, on parliament level, on expert level, and also on presidential level.
Thanks so much, and hopefully the Crimea issue and the fate and future of Crimean Tatar people will remain in the global agenda, so Ukraine will continue its diplomatic, informational efforts to come to the truth. And now I would like to return to the burning topic of these days. I mean, ongoing visit of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to United States, where we all are expecting that he will meet with United States President and also both candidates. And the plan, then the victory plan will be discussed with top officials of the United States. Currently, we don't know all the points of this plan, but still I think it is time to talk about main distinguishing features of the victory plan regarding peace formula, which before was and maybe still remain the agenda for Ukraine's diplomacy regarding finding a solution to end the war. So now I'd like to give floors to Mykhailo Samus and ask him to give his vision regarding how a peace formula distinguish from victory plan, and why it is so important to talk with global communities, global audiences regarding Ukrainian vision of the truthful, of the just peace. And also my second question is your vision regarding whether Ukraine should launch this discussion with United States officials now, or we should wait until the end of electoral campaign and talk with new president of United States.
Thank you very much, Volodymyr. Thank you very much to be here. I'm sorry that I'm being a little bit late, but I'll try to give you more understanding what is going on the battlefield and on the situation with Ukrainian attempts to end the war, to try to create the conditions to end the war. And actually, absolutely right that Ukraine has a basic element of this approach. This is a peace formula, which is actually was approved by approximately 100 countries on the first summit, peace summit. And as I know that Ukraine is going to organize one more a little bit later, maybe even before or kind of in parallel with American elections, which is actually to have a lot of questions why we need to have this formula if Russia actually against it. Of course, Russia against it because it's against Russia's interests and Russia's intentions in this war, to destroy Ukrainian nation, to destroy Ukrainian state. So my answer is that Ukraine is trying to get as many as possible countries to support this plan, to support Ukrainian understanding of the, let's say, the modern planet. What should be our planet in the future? Should be this planet with a country like Russia deciding what is going on the continents. Countries like China, for example, or other countries which we are talking like not axis of evil, but axis of resistance to some old Western civilization. So a lot of theories on it. But anyway, Ukraine is trying to present our understanding of the universal principles of comprehensive peace on this planet, not only for Ukraine. But we understand it. If we allow Russia to continue this war as they want, it means that a lot of countries like Russia will try to continue it for dozens and dozens years, and we won't stop it, never, actually, in our feasible future. So first of all, peace formula is something to support new order with more modern and comfortable order for everybody. And second, the victory plan, it's something which allow to realize or to complete this peace formula because actually, as I told, Russia, of course, against it, China against it, several countries against it. I'm always mention China. Even we could discuss about the role of China, but from the let's say material point of view, without China, it's impossible that North Korea, Russia, and Iran produce all of these weapons. To be honest, so if we're talking about the victory plan, first of all, it's a strong military component. First of all, because a lot of people asking, how is possible that President Zelensky talking about that? Okay, we could finish this very soon. Okay, how? Only strong military support, and finally, NATO shouldn't protect Russia. I'm not mistaken. Not NATO and the United States now is protecting Russia, not Ukraine, because when we don't have a permission to strike beyond the 300 kilometers in depth of Russia, it's impossible from military point of view to conduct operations. So it's like a miracle glass when the Russian soldiers beyond the strange persons, and we cannot kill them. But when they cross the border, we can kill them. It's impossible because all of military infrastructure of Russia to conduct the strategic operation against Ukraine built on Russian territory. On Ukrainian territory, only operational tactical level, but strategic level, all over infrastructure. What I'm talking about, a command post, it's a depots from ammunition, it's air defense, it's ballistic missiles, airfields, everything staying beyond the magic glass. And what we need is just permission to destroy it. You know, the Ukrainian great attacks on the Russian depots and with ammunition, with strategic ammunition depots, and but we do it by Ukrainian weapon. It's drones, and these drones, they have limited capabilities because it's drones. We need to have missiles, and we need to have a lot of missiles because Russians have hundreds of these targets on the 300 kilometers range from Ukrainian borders. So if we're talking about the victory plan, first of all, it's a military component. And by the way, talking about the Crimea, my point of view, the center of gravity of this war, it's Crimea. It's not the Donbass. Center of gravity is from Clausewitz theory that every war has a center of gravity. So it's kind of point which if we solve it, it means that we solve all of possibility. For example, for Russia to conduct the war, and for Ukraine, it means that strategic approach, strategic advantages. Would explain it very easy. Russia, first of all, trying to cut Ukraine from the sea, from the exit to the sea. And it's obviously that they, in 2014, when they occupied and annexed Crimea temporarily, they, in the same time, tried to occupy all of Odessa region, was to cut, and of course Mariupol. It was the first points, Odessa, Mariupol, Crimea, to cut Ukraine from the sea, to change all of geopolitical picture of Ukrainian statehood, Ukrainian nation. If you compare the Ukrainian nation with sea and without sea, it's absolutely different. And of course Russia, they are very smart. I mean, they have a school from Empire that they need to cut Ukraine from the sea. And of course, if you look at the history again, 18th century, when they started to, let's say, make approach, the strategic approach from through Crimea to Black Sea, and after this to so-called Warm Sea, as they called it in Russian Empire, to Mediterranean, to Balkans, to actually, first of all, to Southern Europe, after this Balkans, the Middle East, etc. So the Black Sea is playing a crucial role. And I could remind you the Crimean War in 1856. And a lot of people think that it was a war just on Crimea. No, it was attempts by Russia to have an expansion on the Ottoman Empire space, let's say. They first of all occupied Bessarabia, Balkans, and through Crimea trying to go to the Warm Sea. That time, Western coalition managed the situation. Now it's a very similar situation like now, because we don't have often the comparison between that Crimean War and situation now. Now they think that it's a war for Donbass, something like this. No, it's a geopolitical war by the Russian Empire to occupy new territories, to make expansion, and you know this ultimatum before the full-scale war it was in autumn 2021. They ultimatum by Putin that NATO needs to get out from Eastern Europe, including Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, of course, everything. Yeah, it was official ultimatum actually. They shared it from a Russian MFA. It was autumn 2021. They told we don't want to have any contact with NATO before 1997. So you promised us no expansion of NATO. So you need to get out from till the border of 1997. 1997, it's actually the first new members. It's Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. So this is very open from Russian side. Sometimes people saying, okay, it can be because it's impossible, that Russian is just making some, fantasy. No, it's reality. What they're saying, it's real. Of course, a lot of disinformation, a lot of bluff, a lot of games, but what they saying, it's really that Putin is trying to destroy Ukraine just to restore the empire. And this is what we're talking about if we're talking about this war. So our position now is, first of all, strong military capabilities, and after this, of course, to create the conditions that Putin won't have wish to continue this war. Because now they don't have any motivation to stop this war. They have a lot of money because they're gaining hundreds of billions of dollars by oil, selling with China, India, and other countries. And they have a lot of soldiers because they have enough population, let's say dozens of millions. So why they have a problems with defense industry? It's true. They don't have a proper quantity and proper level of production of tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, ammunition, etc. That's why they widen the cooperation with North Korea, Iran through China, because China is giving raw materials, technologies, all of equipment to produce these military goods. Even China saying that we don't provide Russia any military goods. Okay, but you're providing the capabilities by other countries to produce these military goods and send it to Russia. So unfortunately, if we don't have a solution now in this week, I mean that this is really, really crucial visit by President Zelensky to talk with President Biden and candidates, Harris and Trump, to explain that if now Ukraine doesn't have the permission, it will be very tough talking about any peace, especially comprehensive peace, stable peace on this planet, and it will be, I think that the worst maybe decision by United States for years to destroy actually democratic world or democratic part of this world, because obviously it will be very difficult for Ukraine to stay. It will be without support, without proper military support, without economical support. And we understand in Ukraine that, of course, our Western partners, Western politicians, they are orienting on the own electorate. And of course, electorate has some fatigue. And of course, they want to stop this war. And of course, the political situation now in European countries, for example, actually in the United States, is not very favorable to say that we will give Ukraine more, because the electorate could ask why, and why Germany participated in this war to send some weapons to Ukraine, and we see the results in first lands of Germany, not very favorable for coalition and to mainstream parties, that ultra-right, ultra-left parties, they try to get in more and more. France was a very specific situation, but Macron and his guys, they made a great, I would say, a great maneuver to avoid this catastrophe. But in any countries in Europe now could be the same situation. So we need to create the conditions to show that this war is possible to stop faster, but to stop this war faster, we need to have instruments. It's not, and this escalation, it's talking about escalation. This instrument will give us ability to not allow escalate, to stop this war, but if Ukraine doesn't have these instruments, it will be escalation. It will be more and more Russian attacks, it will be more and more Ukrainian kills. So I think that now is a crucial week, and we'll see how Ukrainian president will manage the situation. But I hope that it will be resolved finally, and we will have the capabilities to change the situation on the battlefield. We need more long range. We need a weapon for F-16, because, to be honest, we have a great aircraft, but we don't have a proper weapon. We don't have long-range missiles. We don't have long-range air-to-air missiles to stop Russian Sukhoi 34 with smart bombs. So a lot of questions. I hope that we are on a crucial and critical period, but we will be successful together, and we'll try to make this world better, I think. It's a little bit pathetic, but I think it's true what we're doing here now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mykhailo, for this excellent analysis. And now I'd like to turn to our audience, to our journalists, and ask you. You're welcome to ask your questions to our experts, and we will be glad to answer. So please, maybe there is some questions.
You were talking about permission from the West to strike with the missiles in the Russian region. The apprehensions from the experts are from the West is that if Russia and other countries, so-called rogue nations, so they join and it become another World War-like situation. So will Russia stop with, if Ukraine attacks Russia on their soil, like missiles sent there, then will it stop with here, or there are apprehensions that the fallout will be for the bigger world? West is not ready to take that burden now, currently. A lot of. So how do you, like what it's not at their cost they would do that. So why are you consistently your leadership and insisting on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great question on the actually like hardcore of the situation and hardcore of the understanding. So if you're talking about the better military capabilities, if you're talking from military point of view, again, I repeat that not all, but 90% of military infrastructure to conduct the war, it's in 300 kilometers. It's a classical doctrine to create the conditions to conduct the operation against Ukraine. If we destroy this military infrastructure, right, Russia could adapt it and move back to 500 kilometers, 600 kilometers. But at the same time, Russia cannot conduct the war. Why? Because they cannot put the command posts on 600 kilometers and conduct operation in Donbass. They cannot keep the Iskander missiles beyond 500 kilometer range because they have battle range 500 kilometers. And we have a lot of problems with Iskander here because it's a ballistic missile, it's very sophisticated. And of course, we know about the Korean missiles, which is used against Ukrainian cities, including Kiev. We have information about Iranian missiles. We need to push out all of ballistic missiles out of 500 kilometers range. It's possible. So Russia cannot provide these strikes. Again, we will destroy all of the ports here. I mean, the depots on the ammunition on 300 kilometers. What does it mean? That Russia won't have ammunition to provide the war. So if you think that Russia could make like in 1 million ammunition, 1 million shells, no. They need to buy it in North Korea, but North Korea already sent all of reserves. They need to produce it. So if we're talking about this permission, it will be at least 2, 3, 4 months that Russia will have a gap with capabilities. Right. After this, they could adapt somehow to use, I don't know, maskirovka, decoy or something like this to put some more sophisticated systems. But it will be a gap. In this gap, Ukraine could blockade Crimea, occupy all of Kursk Oblast, whatever. What Ukraine wants from the military command. I mean, the Ukrainian command won't sit for these 3, 4 months and wait while Russia will adapt. So when we're talking about that, it looks, because your questions means that immediately after Ukraine destroy all of military infrastructure, Russia will make war higher. How is possible if Russia won't have these instruments? So the logic is that these 3, 4 months will give opportunity for Ukraine, together, of course, with Western coalition, to conduct their own operations. And as I told, the center of gravity is Crimea. So at least blockade of Crimea, it's possible. Because the occupation of Crimea, okay, we don't want to make any bad things. And you know, the Crimea, it's a very populated area. So we will ask Russians just get out. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's Ukrainian leadership will give the recommendation for Russians, because all of Russians they are occupiers. They are representatives of state of aggression. That's not like just civil population. No, everybody arrived from Russia to occupy Crimea. They are participating in aggression. This is very sensitive question, of course, from the international law, but we will see. If you ask me how to conduct the blockade, look at the map, you will see everything. That only bridge and the land corridor from Russia to Crimea. So it's possible from military point of view. If Russia won't have military infrastructure on own territory, Ukraine will have capabilities and possibility to cut these both communications and fill with blockade. If you know, Russian fleet now cannot based in Sevastopol peacefully, I would say. They get out from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk and other bases just to avoid that they are destroyed by Ukrainian missiles and sea drones. So Ukraine already started the process of the occupation of Crimea, starting with the occupation of Serpent Island, of all of facilities with gas facilities in the sea, stolen by Russia, by the way, in Ukraine, and of course some special operation forces in actions in Crimea already. So we need something a little bit more, I mean the long-range missiles to destroy the bridge and to cut the land corridor. So it looks real, and it's absolutely different logic when we see that if Ukraine strike a Russian territory, it will be disaster, it will be nuclear war. No, Ukraine now occupying a Russian territory, Kursk Oblast. So what? Nothing. If you ask in Russian informational space, they don't have any problems with Kursk, any problems. Ukraine destroyed last week strategic depots with ammunition, strategic. It's more than 700,000 ammunition destroyed there. Do you know what Russian informational space is talking about it? Nothing. Absolutely. They didn't discuss it. They didn't even publish news about it. Some debris fallen on some areas. It was some fire, but everything is great. You know the situation with Sarmat missiles, the ballistic missiles, with intercontinental ballistic missiles. It was explosion, and satellites see it. Russia didn't say about it, but it was explosion, which means that Russian nuclear program, it's a fake. And do you know what does mean Sarmat missiles? Russians trying to copy Ukrainian missile, Satana, which was in Soviet Union, designed and produced in Dnipropetrovsk that time, on Pivdenmarsh and KB Pivdenne. So Russia, because Ukraine didn't make a service for these missiles for a long time, of course, because of Russia started war in 2014. So Ukraine canceled the service of these missiles, and Russia trying to rebuild, recopy this missile. It's a great missile, and they cannot. Sometimes they saying that Sarmat is, we'll show you Sarmat. Okay, Sarmat exploded last week. So what next? So Russia mainly making bluff against West, against South, everybody. And unfortunately, a lot of people believe it, not Ukrainians. Ukrainians know Russians very well for thousands of years, so we understand it's absolutely clear. A lot of bluff here. Thank you.
And they added that a Sarmat missile can reach Strasbourg in France.
Yeah, of course.
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah. Just before they thought that it was a successful test, they started in the Russian politics. They didn't know that it was failed.
So please, any other questions?
Let me change the conversation to cultural diplomacy. So I'm Kenyan. When the conflict started, Kenya, I think, was the first country to come out with a statement saying we stand with Ukraine because we were colonized by the British. Of course, a lot has changed. The world has changed. Africa, certain countries have moved closer to Russia. All I know is whenever Russia is in East Africa, they skip Kenya. So I think they've seen there's not much they can do in Kenya. But you spoke about your cultural efforts, and you talked about Kenya. And I wanted to know more about it, because disinformation is old news. So even when we sit here, I'm struggling with what will I write that will be relevant to my audience, but will also be new. I'll also give you a bit of context. Before you came, we had 3 members of parliament. And you said something that resonated with me. You said Ukraine must continuously connect with other countries and people. In my view, that is where you lose people. Because when you have people come in, they talk about Russia all the time, every time. And you must, because it is about Russia. then how do you connect with other countries? And we asked the members of parliament, are you talking about Sudan? Because you can resonate with the world if you're talking about what is happening in Sudan. We also talked about the fact that human rights groups are saying the prosecutor is focusing a lot of his resources on Ukraine. It's not your problem as Ukraine. But the thing is, Ukraine has become the model country. Everyone is jealous of Ukraine. Conflict countries want to be Ukraine. So it's a positive thing, how the world has come together for Ukraine. So I think I'm not lecturing. I'm just saying that it would be interesting every time maybe you speak to different audiences, you speak a little bit more on how do we connect? That's why your cultural diplomacy resonated with me.
Yeah, thank you for this great question. And I believe really that these horizontal connections between societies, it's one of the crucial things that we should do now during these times. And I want to start also with our research. Now we continue to make an interview in 8 countries. In Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, India, and Indonesia. Not only about attitude to Ukraine culture, to Ukraine history, but also common ties between these countries. It's important, as for me, it's important to know better our audiences. But also what's important now, not only to talk, but also to listen. That's why I'm so grateful for your inputs about these connections. What we did during this year, we started from South Africa, for example. We started from the art residency for Ukrainian and South African artists. And we talked through the language of art about children. And one of the main topics was the deportation of Ukrainian children and the issue of children in South Africa. In just a few weeks ago, we finished our project in Jakarta in Indonesia. We combine, it was a collaboration between one of the most honored Ukrainian theater, DACH, and Indonesian theater. In one stage in the biggest theater festivals in Jakarta. Now we're preparing to bring to Nairobi Ukrainian jazz musician, the Nairobi Jazz Festival. What we want to do, and our approach is to bring Ukrainian artists to festivals, to venues in your countries, but also to bring your artists here offline or online and to make these collaborations. I believe that this approach of bilateral connections and collaborations between artists, it's an approach how we can spread information about us and to give more better understand about us. Yeah, that's why I hope that we'll see each other in Nairobi. And now we're really prepared, for example, in India, in Jaipur Literature Festival. Yeah, also we're preparing, you know, in literature, in music, in theater, in film, but also we are working with universities, and it's important. Today is the decolonization of knowledge about Ukraine is a crucial thing, not only in countries, for example, Latin America, but also in Europe, because often in academic sphere, in France or in Germany, it was a license from Russian perspective. Or Slavic studies, that was Russian studies, to be honest. Yeah. That's why we want to talk more about us from our voices. And now it's the time to talk.
I know I was not here all the time. I'm sorry for that, because I have a conference in parallel. But I was wondering about what is your soft power at the Ukrainian people? Because this is very important, you know. It's not only about war and about propaganda, but you are giving as a vision to the world, your culture, your vision of your country. So how do you figure it out?
Yeah, to be honest, it's important to understand your audience, yeah, and with whom you are talking on. Soft power of Ukraine, when we talk about importance of freedom and dignity, and how it works through the culture, it's important. Resilience of culture, it's important. It's not only about this war, but from the Soviet period, you see this panno, yeah, on one of the wonderful Ukrainian artists of Soviet period, yeah, Borevitor is the name of this panno. And we talk also about multiculturalism. Why it's important? You know, it's not an approach when we come to another countries and we say our culture is great. No, we say our culture is unique as your culture. And let's try to find the point where we can combine our cultures. For example, it's interesting how it works in Brazil. We talked through the topic of ecology and about Amazonian wood in Brazil, but also ecocide in Ukraine now. But we also talking about famous Brazilian poet who was with the Ukrainian roots. And also we talk about, for example, a Ukrainian artist with the Brazilian roots. And such people or common historical events brings us much more closer to each other.
Please.
That after the summit, there were favorable parts that there were parts that were favorable to Russia, but you didn't explain what those parts were.
Yeah, could you please repeat which
So
part?
you talked about the summit around disinformation, and then you talked about, you know, after the summit, there was, I think, an agreement or, you know, you signed something, and then you said, but there were certain parts that were favorable to Russia, but you just passed through, you didn't talk about them, unless I misheard you, or you can't.
Yeah, I talked this about summit in Switzerland, you mean?
Yes, and then you said there were parts that were extremely favorable to Russia, unless I misheard you, and I could have. Did I?
Yeah, maybe I was just wrong in some part, yeah, but actually I said that when Ukraine trying to organize summit, yeah, in Switzerland, and it was really difficult to invite some leaders from Africa, from Latin America, because we spoke actually with some Ukrainian diplomats who worked very intensively in this direction, and they previously had agreement that, for example, some leader is going to arrive to the summit and say supporting Ukraine, but like few days before the summit, they refused to do this because the tension, the pressure from Russian embassy in these countries really very strong. And maybe I can't tell you concrete countries, but for example, in some countries of Central America, for example, a Russian embassy, they use blackmail. They had some information about these political leaders because they helped them in the previous, when they started their career, when they had election, with all this disinformation campaigns, with also the power, different media also. And they use it now to stop these leaders to support Ukraine actively. Because we can see that, for example, due to some social pools, the population of this country, they support Ukraine, but political leaders sometimes they try to avoid this. And of course, this hypocrisy have some explanation. It's a different situation, different country, but in some of them, that's what we can see. Maybe that's not what you asked, but yeah. And also, I would like to add something a little bit your previous question to Alim. Of course, Alim said really good moments, but also what's very interesting at what ties, yeah, we also had, for example, with Africa. I think we maybe now during the war, it's a little bit problematic moment, but I am sure that after the war is going to be one of the most credible and strong tie with African countries. We can back this tradition, this educational experience, because, for example, when the war started in 2022, I mean the full-scale invasion, we have here in Ukraine 16,000 of African students from different countries, and this tradition started including in Soviet Union times, and it's, in my opinion, it's for like young, also representative of youth, maybe Ukraine. It's one of the best direction to have this diplomacy, to have this connection, to have this soft power, because when the students back to their countries, this like our, I don't want to say agency, but our partners, colleagues, even we can establish a lot of relations, and we have it already, but not enough. And of course, due to the war, it's difficult. And also about historical perspective, it's also it's pity that sometimes people forget here in Ukraine and in other world that we had really close relations before, because Soviet Union is not only Russia. Soviet Union was like consist of different republic, and for example, Ukrainian diplomats, they had the leading role in decolonization of Africa. In 1916, for example, the year of Africa, where 17 countries were decolonized, it was the initiative from Ukrainian diplomats. And this is like only one moment that can explain which strong tradition we had in the past. The same situation, for example, in Peru, the Peru leader, Mykhailo, who was like one of the prominent leaders who got independent from Spain, also was from Ukraine. And I think it's also a very important moment when we can try to find this historical perspective and add something new and continue this.
Thanks, Ivan. And I also like to add a few words regarding the toolkit of higher education of Ukraine, because it is one of the strong leverage of Ukraine before the war. Unfortunately, after the large-scale invasion, we cannot conduct really safe conditions for foreign students, and the studying process turned to the online format mainly. But anyway, we are looking for reestablishing strong connections also with students from Africa, from India. We before Ukraine, we had about 21,000 students from India at the medical departments, and also many students from Africa. And what is important to mention is that given Ukrainian experience, not only in military dimension, but also in countering disinformation, it is very important to bring this knowledge to the local audiences. And I think that Africa may become one of the target region regarding this, because we may just have a look how Russians act, and they are quite actively engaged in attempts to interfere local agendas in Africa, but they do not put all the resources in every country. We in Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group, we managed to overlook how a Russian Ruski Mir Foundation Act, they opened dozens of centers for studying Russian language in Africa during the last years, because after 2022, when many ties with the West were cut down, Russia diversified its diplomatic efforts to the so-called global South, and mainly regarding Africa and Latin America. But what we noticed that, for example, in Kenya, they advertised their activities regarding opening of this Russian language studies center in Nairobi. And if we have a look at the official website of Ruski Mir Foundation, there is a quote of Russian ambassador in Kenya who said that during last years the numbers of students raised 10 times, and now at least 1,000 students in Nairobi study Russian language. But then I had a look at the video of a Russian blogger. He did not support Kremlin, but anyway, in May he came to Nairobi and visited this center. And what we really look at is one teacher of Russian language who is barely know Russian, really. His Russian is really very poor. And instead of 1,000 students, there is only 10 students who study Russian, and they pay for this half-year program $50, which they'd like to turn into the work in Russia, maybe or so. But we see that there is nothing about this scale which Russia tries to create a picture, and that is, in some way, it is also about the corruption in Russian official structures. But yeah, that is why I put this story. But anyway, if we look at the Sahel region, Russians act very actively there, and in comparison, they opened new Russian houses, Russian buildings there. Just several days ago, they opened in Chad quite a large building, and also they conduct very actively activities towards so-called anti-disinformation campaigns, where RT journalists are engaged in countering, so-called countering disinformation of Western agencies like Deutsche Welle, CNN, BBC, etc. So it is right to talk about, but really RT Academy is quite active at the Sahel region, in Mali, in Niger, and also in Cameroon. So yeah, it is a right picture, but it is true that Russian propagandists are telling to the African journalists, and these courses are also in online format. So every journalist in Africa may come to this online academy by RT, and Russian propagandists will influence on their vision of the global issues. So that is how Russia acts, and I think that Ukraine should also move forward, because we obtain large amount of experience in that matter, and I think that many countries also in Africa and Latin America will find this experience, especially in terms of counter disinformation, very useful. So I think that that is the way how, only just one example, how Ukraine may interact with local communities, with journalists, and bring our senses, not to make you talk about Ukraine forcibly, but to explain the threat of disinformation. And after that, you by yourself will come to the understanding of how we shall interact, and why Russian and Chinese attempts to interfere with informational means is the threat. Thanks.
Yeah, simple questions. I'm going to translate the questions of my friend Cissé. Miss Cissé works for Presse Afrique, which is a French-speaking press organ. She has two questions. The first one is maybe for you, Alim. You spoke about cultural exchanges and projects with Indonesia, Kenya, Brazil, and 8 years, yes. And do you have, what are the following countries on the list? Maybe are you some other projects, and especially maybe some Western African countries, maybe? And the second question is, do you have another field of question? Do you have, this is well known that you welcome each year before the full-scale invasion, a lot of students from abroad and from Africa. Do you have a number to give us of the amount of persons, of African students who came in Ukraine just today? So two questions. Yeah, before, yes, before the, yeah.
Just very short about African students. You asked, in 2022, when full-scale invasion started, we had 16,000 students from Africa. But what we have now, I'm not sure, because as you understand, many people go and study online, but I know that some students still here, maybe not so much, but yeah, because we have like Ternopil, for example, medicine school, which is very, very good, and the situation there is not so dangerous, yeah, but of course not so much as we had before.
Very briefly about our geography. When I talk about these 8 countries, it doesn't mean that we directly, strictly working only with these countries. For example, now we have an academic initiative from Ghana, and we will now we are in the process of communication with the partners from the Ghana to make some academic course about Ukraine in a local university. That's why it means that if we have a cultural field or academic field and this field of cooperation in other African countries, why not? Yeah, we are open for this.
Thank you. Thanks. I would like to express gratitude to our experts, to our speakers. So now we may chat personally, and thanks for joining us. So keep in touch. Hopefully we put quite a bit of light to these complicated issues.